Hey everybody, it's me, Angela Walters. Welcome to this week's live chat. Now, if you're looking at the schedule for the video series that we're in the middle of, you might be thinking there wasn't supposed to be a live chat today. That's because I had taken it off for the holidays, for Christmas, but last week I had to reschedule that live chat to this week. So that's why we're here. Thank you for your flexibility. It was just too darn cold to get out. So Jessica and I decided we're just closing up and we're going to stay home and stay warm. But now that things are starting to thaw out, I hope that you all are staying warm. I hope that you're safe and that you had very happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I know I sure did, but I'm excited to get back to the challenge, to get back to the video series and kind of, get back to regular life or real life, whatever that might be. So in this week's live chat, I'm going to recap the video that came out last week. So there was no video in the series today or this week because of Christmas, but we'll be out next week and we'll wrap up the challenge of the next 3 weeks and really have a good time with it. So the video that came out last Tuesday, we worked on a new area of our panel and we saw a lot of similar things that we've seen before, but hopefully got you inspired to work on that. So I do have some pictures, some stuff to go over, kind of like a recap of what we saw in that video, but also kind of like any tips or questions that might come up about it. Love to share. If you're watching live, great. I'm so glad you're here. I go live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central, but my sidekick Jessica's here monitoring the chat, kicking out those spammers and writing down your questions. So if you're watching live, you can type your questions in the chat and I'll answer them at the end if you have any. If you're not watching live, no worries. You can just leave it in the comments section and I'll get to those when I can. Usually I get on from time to time and address those. So anyway, so glad that you're here and let's just jump right into it. All right, first of all, every week, not every week, but sometimes during the live chat, I have some kind of deal for you or a giveaway, and I have this little giveaway for you. It's the Lickety Split quilt. So this quilt is made from panels. It only has 4 seams and you get the finished quilt top. And it kind of stemmed from Build a Quilt, our block of the month. And we have these panels that we cut the quilt blocks out of and we had some extra and I thought, ooh, how cool would it be to turn that into a quilt? So Joni, our Build a Quilt maven, did just that. She turned it into the Lickety Split quilt. Now this kit, 4 seams, real great, fast to piece if you need a last minute gift, if you're celebrating Christmas late. If there's somebody in your life that you love, but they're not quilt worthy, great option for them. And it's like 55 by 60, so it's kind of like a big crib size quilt, but you could get multiple and put them together if you want. But just for you guys, I'm gonna do a giveaway. So all you have to do is after I'm done live, leave a comment letting me know which color option you like. I'm going to show you the options here in a second. And next week, I will pick a lucky winner. However, if you don't want to wait, you can pick from 3 different colorways. So we've got, I know everybody's like not thinking Christmas right now, but if you need a kickstart to next Christmas, I've got the Lickety Split in the Holly Jolly colorway. Also the Luxe, which is on the left, the pink and gray, and then the Stroll, which is the more masculine in there. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to do this, but I'm thinking this would be a great practice, something like this for practicing machine quilting. But you can get the kit. Again, it just has 4 panels and 1 panel for the binding. Very fast to put together. So very beginner friendly. Like I said, very great for a last minute gift, or if you need something to practice machine quilting on. But I do have it just for my live chat watchers. You can get it for $29.99. So it's $5 off. You just have to use the promo code SPLIT when checking out. That's only good while supplies last or until next week. So if you want to take advantage of that, if you need something to practice your machine quilting, or you just need a last minute gift. I think it's going to be fun to take some of these and make a bigger quilt out of it. Just kind of a random patchwork looking quilt that was nice and quick to make. Those are my favorite kinds. All right, but let's leave that behind. Real quick though, if you are interested in that, you can click the link in the description box below. So I'll have a link to those kits and also about the challenge, which we're gonna be recapping the 3rd week. So this week we moved from the center and we did the first ring last week and now we're getting to the next part, which is that dark blue area and the white in between it. And so in this time, we're dealing with a very irregular shaped area, something pointy on the ends and kind of rounder in the middle. And we saw a lot of different options for these. And throughout the challenge, I just want to make sure I keep reiterating, you can quilt whatever you like. These are just suggestions or just different ideas to get your kind of creative juices flowing. But as you get quilting, if an idea pops up, you should definitely go ahead and go with that. And if you're watching and you're like, I don't know what she's talking about right now, the Mandala Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along is a free video series that we're smack dab in the middle of where we're working on this mandala panel together. All right, I do have free downloadable diagrams for every week, so please be sure to check those out. I love seeing that people are taking advantage of those because, you know, I want you to be successful with the designs that we're learning, but I also have an expanded resource PDF that has even more tips and even more diagrams. So if you need a little bit more help, you can check that out. But let's look first at the blue section, and I kind of was at a loss of what to call this area, the blue area, the blue flower or whatever, the dark blue section. And when I looked at that shape, I thought, you know, you can really do a lot with it, even though it might not look like it right off the bat. This is not a common shape that you're going to be seeing on a lot of your quilts. So it's not like you're learning a feather that fits in this shape. You're learning how to take designs and apply them to the areas that you're working with. So in this particular one, I decided to use the fabric design kind of as the guide and quilt some feathers in there and some echo lines and some wishbone. This is really fun. It's elegant, especially since we've seen some of these designs before in this video series, but it is going to take a little bit longer. It's a little bit, I won't say more difficult, but there's traveling, there's a little bit more steps to it. So this is going to be for those of you that have the time to invest in it, that want to learn feathers, get better at that, or just want that elegant look. But if you're short on time, if you don't love feathers, then I've got some other options for you as well. But basically in the tutorial, I just talk about, you know, how do we take that shape and we break it up and we use traveling to get where we need to go. We use echoing to highlight sections and then different fillers to fill in the rest. So great option. But if you want something that's just a little bit quicker but still elegant, you could just quilt a feather so it fits that whole area. Now I know we've seen feathers already and we've seen the plume feather. I have these designs in my mind that work great in irregularly shaped areas, that work great in spots like this that you're like, I don't even know what to do with. So knowing those designs and knowing when to use them will really help you when it comes to quilting other quilt tops that you may or may not have laying around. And so again, if you don't have the panel, or even if you're not quilting along with me, hopefully you're getting some little nuggets and tidbits that you can apply to your quilt. Another thing I want to point out here is when I'm doing the tutorial, I'm not just showing you the design, I'm trying to show you how do we transition from one to the next. And I know it gets a little tedious, especially if you hear me say all the time, you don't have to travel, you can tie off, you can start a new line of quilting. So please don't look at that like, oh my gosh, I have to do it that way. But I'm always interested in how can I work my way around that quilt the most efficient way possible without starting and stopping a new line of quilting. So in the tutorial, we also saw how we use traveling to do that. Again, you don't have to do that. Traveling or quilting along that fake seam of our block is definitely up to you. Now from there, though, you can pick and choose which pieces of those designs you want to use. You could just only echo, you could only do a feather, you could mix and match a little bit. So this is a time to kind of, you know, work out your design skills. But here we can see where I've quilted that feather on both sides with the wishbone in between. Now in the videos, of course, like I always do, I use a contrasting thread so you can see what I'm doing because, you know, that's kind of important in a video tutorial. But in this area, go ahead and use the robin egg or that blue thread color if you bought the coordinating thread collection. I wouldn't necessarily suggest cantaloupe like I used, but it will give you that nice texture. And then here you can see it with the purple, so you can actually use the purple as well. I would suggest the blue though. So there again, you can see a little bit of that same idea, using those petals, using the wishbones, kind of filling in that area. Or leaving out the feathers and putting in echo lines. It's kind of like a choose your own quilting adventure, right? Like, ooh, what do I want to do? So just kind of look at it. You can even, as you're working your way around that ring, you can pick and choose which ones you want to use. Or you can leave out the echo lines and just do a nice filler in there. So again, a lot of design options, and I didn't show too many because I don't want it to be overwhelming, but I do want to give you the encouragement, the ability to take that and make those designs yours. Because everybody's different. Every skill level is different. Every preference that we have, every machine that we're working on. So please, please, as you're working through it, tailor this to fit your preferences. And then we can see here, again, just some ribbon candy on the right side with the blue and just some echo lines. Great time to practice some of those sashing designs or those designs that you're not comfortable doing in bigger areas. And I'm sure if you sit down and think about it, you could probably come up with even more variations than what I'm even showing. And there you can see again, filling in that area. That's the most important thing. I just want to make sure that the whole area is filled in as completely as possible, because I think people will notice a gap in the quilting before they notice an error. So As long as I fill the whole thing in, it's going to look great. Now, we're going to see next week, I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. Sometimes you can't fill in the whole area with the design. Well, no worries. We can use echoing or filler to do that. So if you had quilted this feather in that section and it didn't quite reach out to the sides, just echo around it or use some filler to fill that in. That's a little tidbit in there that didn't make it in the video, but I think it's important to remember that most often we can fix it without ripping it out, and that's a great option there as well. And then of course, just some echo lines. These echo lines, or these kind of lines that are echoing the outside or the shapes on the inside, they're nice and smooth. They don't have to be the perfect shape. They're nice and compact and kind of within a range. Next week, we're going to see some echo lines that get a little bit longer, right? So now we have to move on to that. But here, this is great for those of you that are newer to machine quilting that just want to get the flow of moving the machine or the fabric or the machine. But I do want to point out, I can't remember if I did this in the video or not. I'm showing design options, but you could always just fill in that area with a filler, with any design you want. It's still going to be pretty. It's still going to look nice. So again, don't feel like you have to pick from these options. You can pick and choose what you'd like. But then we moved from that big irregular blue area to that white area in between. And that is the tricky one because it is so small, but irregular shape, but there are some bigger areas, and how do we transition from one to the next? So that was my favorite takeaway from the video tutorial last week. How do we move from one section, quilt this section, and move on? And in the video, I show you a couple different options for that. When it comes to this area though, if you want to use your white thread, that's going to be great. Your yellow thread will look good there too. Just something to give it nice texture. And basically what I'm doing is moving from one side using the quilting to help maneuver my way around the area and then on to the other. And so just a basic simple echoing. Of course, you can leave that out if you wanted to. You could even leave it unquilted if you wanted to, but it's just definitely up to you. When I'm transitioning from one side and I'm quilting, you know, that little petal shape, you have some different options of what you can put in there. I tried to show some echoing. I tried to show some fillers like the swirls that you see here, a little bit of continuous curve inside that pink arc. So I think just kind of thinking about some of those shapes and designs that we've used before, but in a slightly different way. One question that came up, and I can't remember if it was this part or another part, the diagrams are a little different than I guess how I show it in the video. Maybe I went from one point to the next. Most of these designs can be quilted in any arrangement, right? Even though I quilt my continuous curve to the center and kind of work my way around, I could do it differently. So just getting the idea of how the design goes together, and then you can sit and figure out how does it make sense for you to work your way around that area. And if you want to not use some dense filler, some just nice echo lines to fill in that area. I know I said at the beginning, but it's true. Echoing is your best quilting friend. And here, we're not using it so much to highlight a shape. We're using it to fill in that weird shaped area that we were left behind with. Again, I'm using that dark gray thread so you can see the quilting. It is very stark. It's very, shows up very, very well. And even me who does this for a living, I'm like, oh, I can see where that start and stop is a little messy. So just know that when you use a matching thread color, it lets you see the texture of the quilting and not every little bit and bobble. And then here you can see again that continuous curve in that area. So looking at your quilts that you have, you know, laying around that you're quilting, asking yourself which designs can I use in these areas, and how do I need to maneuver my way around this quilt? How do I need to attack it, for lack of a less aggressive word? And there you can see there the continuous curve. Now, in the video, I do a lot of traveling, which is stitching along that fake seam. You can see around that pink arc there, a lot of echoing. But as you're working through your quilt, if you're not sure where to go, just stop and ask yourself out loud, if it helps, where do I need to go next and how can I get there? If I'm over here, where do I need to be? If I need to be over there, how can I get there? Can I travel? Can I echo? Can I quilt a design that will take me there? Can I scream and drink? Absolutely. I can also tie off and start a new line of quilting. So just kind of knowing that you're not always going to know everything you're supposed to do, but just pause, take your time, and work your way through it. And then we did see the quilted version, and then this is just the illustration of the filler in between the rest. So just kind of quilting those swirls in that space between. This is actually counterintuitively a little bit more difficult than it might look. Even if you're comfortable quilting swirls or whatever filler you're using, we're dealing with some very pointy, small areas that we have to work our way in and back out. So again, don't be afraid to use traveling or echoing to help yourself maneuver around that area. And I can't remember if I said this in the video or not. This is not the time when you're if you decide to do a filler, like swirls in that area, this is not really the time to try a new design. Pick a design that you already feel somewhat comfortable quilting, or one that makes you feel less like throwing up as you're working on it. Because we're dealing with such a difficult kind of shape, this is perfect for a design that you already feel somewhat comfortable quilting. So even if it's a meander, even if it's whatever that shape is. But again, your easy option for here, your easy button, will be just to use echoing around that pink arc and then move on. All right, next week, our challenge will resume. Our next week's tutorial will come out on Tuesday, and we're gonna be dealing with that white area and that those purple teardrops. So the last challenge, last week's video was quite in depth. You had quite a bit of area. This one, not quite as much, but the next week we'll finish it up. But anyway, next week, this is what we're working with. And again, we're gonna see some of those same things that we saw already, feathers or motifs. How do we fill that area as much as possible? How do we handle when our area is not all the way filled in? And then also echoing. Of course, you had to know that was going to be the option, right? But what you echo is what you will show off. And so here I'm echoing around the teardrop, that purple teardrop, just to draw attention to it. But you can also echo around the outside just to give it that little bit of a definition. And this is really one of those easier ways to give that custom look that's not too difficult. So looking forward to next week's live chat and video. Sorry, my brain just like stopped working. So hopefully you're excited, you're having fun. I know that in the type chat before I went live, usually about half an hour before I go live, I get on there and chit chat with everybody. Some people are like, oh, I love the pace. Other people are like, oh, it's too much. These videos are always going to be on my YouTube channel, so you can check them out when you're ready for them. There is no rush. And if you happen to find yourself working through a previous Free Motion Challenge video series, you can still come on the live chat and ask questions about that one too. So it's definitely welcome. No feeling guilty. That's the main rule, I think, when it comes to this. All right. So any questions? Hopefully a few. Hopefully none I don't know the answer to. What kind of thread do I use, and do I ever have issues with my top thread shredding? So I love all kinds of threads. I love them all the threads. In this option, the first thing I would say is you want to use a quality machine quilting thread. So as long as it's a quality machine quilting thread, you're going to be fine. Your machine can be set to work with that. However, I love Glide, which is what I use in the videos. It's what I sell. We have every color on our website because it just has that little bit of sheen. It's poly, but it just looks really nice. It's a 40 weight thread, so it shows up a little bit more. Let's see if I have a spool of it. I have a little spool right here. Just that little bit of sheen, but it's not metallic. It's not difficult to work with. It's just that twist that gives it that little bit of sheen. It's 40 weight thread, so it shows up just a little bit. If you wanted your quilting to not show up as much, like a 50 weight sew fine would work. But yeah, sometimes I do have issues with my thread shredding, my top thread, and it can be a number of different things. If you're having trouble with shredding thread, super frustrating. It usually happens when you have a quilt that's due the next day, or you've got to get this thing finished. That's usually when it happens. It could be a number of things. It could be not quality thread. It could be the wrong needle size. It could be moving the quilt or the fabric in a way that's a little bit sporadic, and it's causing friction on there. And it really just depends on that kind of stuff. If you find that it's always shredding in the same spot of a design, like it's always doing it in the point of my leaf, then I'll know that it's probably how I'm moving it around. If it's shredding when I always go one direction, it could just be how I'm moving, or it could be something about the machine. Hopefully that helps. I wish I could put together a flow chart for thread and needle tensions. Like you just follow these steps and it will be golden, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Well, I have. All the answers are drink more wine, but I don't know how that would be very typical or very helpful. All right, which Free Motion Challenge quilting along would I suggest for a beginner? So all the challenge videos are kind of done with the assumption that the person watching knows the basics, right? I know how to drop the feed dogs. I know how to speed up my machine. I know how to set it for free motion quilting. So there's none that are like true, like here's how to baste your quilt sandwich. But that being said, free motion quilting designs aren't like math. It's not like something you have to build off of. You can pick and choose where you want to start. So if you go back to my YouTube channel or you go to the website, you can see all the different challenges and you can kind of pick which one do you feel like working with. If you're like, man, I want to learn feathers. I know I haven't quilted anything before, but that's what I want to do. Then you start with the feathers challenge. So you can pick and choose where you want to go. that being said, the very first one is a great sampler. So there's like a bunch of different designs and techniques that we learn. So that just the free motion challenge quilting along, which is the first one, is a great option there. Another fun one would be the fillers challenge, which was the last one that we just did, because every week we showed different designs. And so you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to learn. This is also a good challenge for a beginner. It might not look like it, but since you can customize what you're working on, you can pick and choose, and it also is. I will tell you, no matter which challenge or which project you start on, if you get a big piece of fabric and you get started, when you're finished, you'll be better than when you started. So whatever it is, just jump in and go for it. I promise it's gonna look great. All right, well, that was a quick live chat, but I will be back next week, next Tuesday, with the next video in the series, next Thursday for my live chat. And then don't forget, if you wanna win your lickety split quilt kit in your color option, just leave a comment after the live is over and I'll pick a lucky winner next week. Or if you want to get that for less than 30 bucks, you can click the link in the description box below. All right, everybody, have fun, stay safe, and I will see you next week. And until then, everyone, happy quilting.